On this episode of the WildFed podcast.
Molokai is the center, the pico, the birthplace of Hula. It sits in between Oahu, Lanai, and Maui.
The connection to the days of hunting and gathering are so alive here. It's not lost to time the way it is in so many places.
People from the mainland think of Hawaii as white, sandy beaches and palm trees and jungle, but there's this whole other element of ruggedness, plains, cowboy.
The axe deer got here in the middle 1800s. It was a gift from the Emperor of Asia. It started 8 animals. What we have today is, 50 to 70,000.
The herd here is so big, you're essentially tripping over sheds and deadheads all day long.
If we can get the herd down to a much more manageable level, that would be amazing.
I'm going home with some life lessons in addition to some meat, so thank you for this time.
Patient man is the humble man, and the humble man is a patient man. Just take your time.
Episode 145 of the WildFed podcast. Let Molokai change you. Hunting access in Hawaii with Keanini is brought to you by Surthrival. If you're looking to increase testosterone levels without turning to pharmaceutical testosterone replacement therapy, take a look at Surthrival's pine pollen. Pine pollen is a rich source of naturally occurring testosterone and a suite of other androgenic hormones that can be used to gently boost your T levels. Right now until the end of August, the coupon code RESTORE20 gets you 20% off all pine pollen products at surthrival.com. My favorite is Surthrival's Pine Pollen Pure Potency. It's an herbal elixir I formulated with stinging nettle root to keep your body's free testosterone levels up while the pine pollen gently boosts them. It's got Siberian ginseng for hormone upregulation and maple syrup, vanilla bean, and orange peel to give it an incredible orange creamsicle flavor. Stop by surthrival.com to check out the entire pine pollen lineup, including pine pollen powder, pine pollen tincture, and of course, pine pollen pure potency, Surthrival's flagship pine pollen product. These are formulas I use and stand by, and so do thousands of other men who've used them too. For the rest of August, use the coupon code RESTORE20 for 20% off all pine pollen products at surthrival.com. Do you love mushrooms? Do you know that eating mushrooms is called mycophagy? Mushrooms are, of course, a cornerstone of the wild food experience, but learning about them can be daunting. Would you like to learn to identify and harvest mushrooms, but you aren't quite sure where to start? Then it's time to check out the North American Mycological Association. The North American Mycological Association has 97 affiliate clubs across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, so there's probably a chapter near you. You can check them out at namyco.org. For a completely immersive and in-person experience, including lectures, workshops, foraging, and of course, mycophagy, you can attend their annual foray. The 2022 foray will be held in the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. Again, go to namyco.org to register. When you do, mention WildFed and you'll get a free copy of Maxine Stone's book, Missouri Wild Mushrooms, when you attend. Again, go to namyco.org to get started. The North American Mycological Association, promoting, pursuing, and advancing mycology. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. 10 days on Molokai, hunting, gathering, and connecting with local people to learn a bit about their culture and life. I couldn't be more grateful to have this kind of an experience. I first visited Hawaii when I was 20, spending half a year trying to figure out a life on Maui. It was total culture shock. I was young, naive, idealistic, and broke, and if I'm honest, ill-equipped to understand the rich culture and history around me. I struggled to understand then that despite being the 50th state, Hawaii is in many ways more like its own country than a state, and that each island in its own way is more like an individual state than part of a single state. It's just a bit too remote from the mainland and still too close to its original indigenous culture to be as completely subsumed by the U.S. as other contiguous states have been. Now, in my mid-40s, having had some time to mature and grow and get exposed to more travel and cultural diversity, I was much better prepared for a trip like this one. Back then, though, I remember people talking to me about Molokai. It's a place where just locals live, they'd say. You can't go there was the message. Well, you certainly can go there, but it's true. It's not a tourist spot. Unlike Waikiki Beach on Oahu's Honolulu, it's not cluttered with high-rise hotels and high-end shopping centers. You have the distinct impression you are on people's home turf. The infrastructure that's there is for the people who live there. The island is small, just 10 by 38 miles, and it's been through its share of hardships. Bombed out by the U.S. military for ordinance testing, exploited for cash crops by the pineapple industry, overgrazed by the cattle industry, and currently a test site for GMO crops, this island and its people have reason not to want the steady stream of outsiders that have turned many of the other Hawaiian islands into popular tourist destinations. That said, it's still something of a paradise, protected as it is on three sides by its sister islands and by the world's highest sea cliffs that stand sentinel on its northern shores. There's a reason it's considered the Pico, or navel, of the Hawaiian archipelago. With its incredible lush eastern half, complete with enormous cascading tropical waterfalls, its beautiful beaches, abundant and productive ocean, and of course the spirit of aloha, which infuses everything as a kind of constant ambience that sets the tone for a more relaxed and chilled out way of living than mainlanders like myself are used to. But Molokai has a serious exotic animal issue, and at a level like nothing I've ever witnessed before. I've heard many times during my hunting years about animal populations that exceed carrying capacity and require intensive management, and specifically where hunting is the primary tool for doing so. But wow, I just wasn't prepared for the level of axis deer overpopulation that I witnessed there. Molokai's western side, the side that was bombed, pineappled, and grazed, is now essentially bare volcanic red earth. Just take a look on Google Earth or your phone's satellite map software and you'll see what I mean. It's a fine dust that impregnates your gear, your clothes, and for the television production minded, your cameras and lenses too. The heavy winds and dust devils carry parts of the island bit by bit out to sea, and there's nothing to stop the flow of rainwater from doing the same as it drains off the exposed landscape. The result is significant erosion. Before plants have the opportunity to anchor the soil to the ground, the deer, for which there are easily 10 animals to every person, browse it down, exposing the earth and contributing significantly to the constant erosion problem. In fact, on any given day of hunting, my team and I would find dozens of shed antlers and several deadheads too, the skeletal remains of animals that have died due to drought and competition for the limited nutritional resources they need to survive. A couple miles from our hunting camp to our hunting spot before dawn would routinely reveal several dozen animals in our headlights. You've got to remain alert at night since deer versus car collisions are a constant threat. Now, it's important to mention, many of the residents there I met subsist on axis deer, which most agree is amongst the finest venison in the world. So as far as problems go, there's at least this incredible culinary opportunity. But despite the significant hunting pressure the locals exert, and the mortality induced by the drought, the animal numbers remain staggeringly high. So outfitters like Ku, my guest today, guide visiting clients on incredible hunts. And not just for axis deer, but for black buck antelope too, who escaped the now defunct safari that once operated there, naturalizing themselves to the island and contributing to the denuding and erosion of the landscape. So as you can imagine, hunting there, especially for does and ewes, feels like a valuable conservation effort. And as far as hunts go, I'm not sure it gets better. Just imagine glassing for and spot and stalking animals Western big game style while looking out over the Pacific Ocean on three sides of you, with Oahu, Lanai, and Maui in the distance rising up out of the turquoise and jelly blue inter-island channels that separate these tropical landmasses. And while the islands and its inhabitants might be initially skeptical of visitors from away, particularly from the mainland, they are also incredibly generous and warm once you've demonstrated a willingness to tread lightly, listen, and not interfere with the vibes of a place that's had enough meddling from outsiders. Being cool and recognizing where you are goes a long way there. And while our experience there was unique, we quickly felt welcomed and looked after. I'll never forget the hospitality we experienced there. So despite being from away, we were lucky enough to be let in on some incredible opportunities, like foraging fruit near some majestic ancient ruins, harvesting abundant pools of dried sea salt from the rocky coast, crabbing with grandma at a new moon low tide, or eating fresh raw limpets and urchins from the tidal pools overlooking the island's western coast. It never ceases to amaze me how transcultural the love of hunting, fishing, and foraging is. Everywhere I go, there are people as in love with these practices as I am. And when they recognize it, they want to share it with you. The same way I want to share it with folks who visit me here in Maine. Lastly, before this episode starts, I just want to personally thank you, Koo. You really went above and beyond to make this experience wonderful for us. Thank you. You're an amazing human, my friend. And if you're listening to this thinking you'd like to do some hunting on Molokai, reach out to Koo. He's definitely your guy. Just be cool and leave the intensity of the mainland life at home. Trust me, you'll be glad you did.
Koo, Phil, welcome to the show.
Aloha.
How's it?
Yeah, I got Grant Giuliano here, our producer. Phil Schleter, our BCAM this trip, although I don't think BCAM describes the man at all. And we got Koo Keanini from Molokai, Hawaii.
What's up, guys?
Man, this has been an incredible time here. Koo, I just want to start off by saying thank you for your just outrageous hospitality, incredible guiding. Yeah, and just all around being a really good friend this week.
Oh, man, it was a blast. Everything that we did this week is kind of like what we do just in general.
That's what we were really seeing that. You know, it's neat that these things, from the crabbing to the salt gathering, the hunting, you know, all of it's like woven into the kind of tapestry of you and your family's life. And it's a really beautiful thing.
It's just life. And where people think we're just trying to survive, I mean, we're thriving.
Yeah,
definitely thriving.
Yeah, we're thriving.
Let's tell people a little bit about where we are, and let's assume people, of course, know about Hawaii, but maybe don't know about Molokai.
Well, a little island that's about 10 miles wide and close to about 38 miles long, close to about 7,000 people in population, and pretty much everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody is like uncle, auntie, cousin, you know, grandpa, grandma. And, you know, we just get along as a unit. Yes, there is always some type of animosity that may happen between.
A drama here and there.
A little drama here and there, but every family does, right?
Yeah.
You know, and Molokai is kind of that big family unit.
Yeah. Real small town feel.
Yeah.
And real locals only feel.
Definitely.
Like this isn't a place where there's tourists everywhere. You don't see, there's not a lot of like, there's not like an industry really geared towards the tourism, except maybe in the hunting world a little bit, but not even so much, right? I mean, you guys seem to be one of the few outfits.
Yeah, Molokai used to be had to do a lot with tourism in general, and that's where most of our economy came from. And over time, you know, industries start falling out here. Yeah. So we've lost a bit of different hotels and different scenic things that people would come here for. So Molokai still has the heart, the love, natural growth, because we just love to be here. We don't want overly built island or development, so to speak. So we keep it Molokai.
Yeah.
And we try to bring in some tourism, and there's still some people that battle against that, but we know we need the economy to keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's where we're at today, at this point. In the 80s and the 90s, it was all about tourism. You know, there was 80% capacity or 80% filled in all of the hotels, motels that was on this island on a consistent basis. So can you see, I mean, you guys been walking around here and you notice that it's a lot less tourism than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Because it's not being promoted that way anymore, because we don't have the places to
the infrastructure
to really hold that many people.
Yeah.
So it would be nice. There are a couple of new things that are coming up in the future. There's a couple of bed and breakfasts or a little motel that's being built in town. So that might bring in more economy to the island, so we can kind of get out of a little rut that we're sitting in.
It's one of the amazing things about Molokai, I find, though. It's that you go to the other islands and you do have a lot more of a tourist infrastructure, but here it does feel a little bit more rural. It does feel a little bit more remote, and it's one of the most amazing things about Molokai.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things that's hard when you travel from mainland is like go to places where there is a tourist infrastructure and you're like, oh man, I'm caught in this machine. I want to get outside of this tourist thing. I want to be like, I'm not just your average regular white guy. Like I'm like, I want to get involved in things. I want to experience things, but it can be really difficult if there's a tourist infrastructure. So when we got here, I was like, oh, cool. Like maybe it'll be a little bit hard to make connections. Turns out it wasn't really that hard, but I was like so preferring that over, because once we got to Waikiki, it felt like we were stuck on some kind of like a escalator or some kind of like revolving merry-go-round. There you go. It's like, hey, you want to go to Gucci? Want to go to Prada? Want to go spend 26 twice. Want to go spend $26 on a smoothie that's not that good? It's like
so many people.
So many people everywhere.
Everybody's in your bubble.
Yeah.
That's like the epicenter of where you see the impact tourism truly does have on these islands. And, there's pros and cons too. It is an economic driver, but it's also has pretty major impact.
Yeah.
And you see that in the different communities and what that looks like.
Right. And then geographically, this is a really interesting place. You guys keep describing it as like the belly button, the navel.
Yeah, so
Pico.
Molokai is basically the center, the pico, or your belly button. Molokai houses or had started hula in sort of term. Okay, so we're known for the hula pico. Hula meaning the dance, the form, the knowledge, everything to be passed on. But pico meaning center. So Molokai is the birthplace of hula.
If somebody's listening to this and they're like, hula, geez, I mean, well, I think I've seen the lays and the grass skirts, the bobbleheads on people's dashboards. Like, they don't know, like, what does that mean or the depth of what's behind it.
Well, in Hawaiian culture, there wasn't a written language. Everything was spoken. It was taught visually. So we were all visual, hands-on learners. So to keep the tradition and keep the stories being passed down, hula was one of the ways that was brought across and taught.
Yeah.
So with a certain song or certain movement, it meant something in a way that the next generation would definitely understand what this generation is seeing.
So it's like language, history, culture, traditions, all
in
into
one.
The dance and
in
the
one.
form. Wow, it's beautiful. Yeah, because when we were with James that day, he points over to this hill. He's like, "You see that hill? That's the birthplace of hula."
Yeah,
like,
that
really?
is the birthplace of hula. On the top of that hill, they would do sunrise ceremonies. So they can see the sun coming up, and they would, dance and chant. And basically, it's like a prayer or a thank you too.
Yeah.
And asking, for more guidance and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And after that ceremony, because we have a big event that happens on Molokai, it's called the Hula Pico. And they will come down and then join the rest of the community. And there's hula halaus or dance groups that comes from all over the state, all over the world, that will put on little performances. There's no competitions.
Yeah.
It's just about sharing knowledge.
Yeah.
Sharing the culture and keeping that culture going.
Right.
And you were saying that you grew up doing hula.
I did a bit of little hula, throughout time, A little in California, it's funny because, yes, growing up here, I kind of took all of that for granted, But the moment that I leave the state and I go out of state, I start immersing myself into the culture a little more. I end up being an instructor. I started teaching.
You became more interested in your own culture.
Yes,
when you left
outside of my culture, basically. Yeah. I'm looking at it from a different perspective at that time.
Can you go a little deeper into that, like what it was you felt or saw or thought about?
I missed home.
Yeah.
And I think that was really it. I missed home. I missed the ocean. The ocean is a big key for us locals here. You wake up. Yeah, you can wake up in a mountain, but you can look over the edge. There's still ocean right there.
It's really hard to get a place where you don't have a view of the ocean somewhere. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. The four directions here are extremely important, not just for navigating, but for really practical everyday things, because an island this small means that wind or storms or whatever coming from any one of those directions, completely different effect, right? And what it means for you here. So tell us, and also, one of the really cool things here is seeing Lanai, seeing Maui, seeing Oahu. I mean, they look just like you could shoot a rifle over to them almost. I know you couldn't, but I mean, they look so close. Like that, these stretches of water between the islands is relatively small, and so the where you look out determines what you're seeing, but also what's coming your way. So describe a little bit of that, like how the different directions and what their weather and things like that.
So Molokai sits in between Oahu, being on the west of Molokai, and then south of Molokai you also have Lanai, and a little more east we'd have Maui. North of us there's nothing. So most of the storms that come here are coming from the south. So Molokai is pretty much protected all the time.
Yeah.
All of that storms and whatnot that comes through.
So they come from like Antarctica? Like down in the polar regions?
I just know they come from south. Yeah. They come wrapping around Big Island as well as Lanai. But by the time it gets near Molokai, it's pretty much broken down and we're just getting
out of energy.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that really stood out to me. Living on Oahu, I haven't been to Molokai yet, and coming over here, Lanai really cuts down on the swell, the storms, the wind. Being on that
south shore is always really nice. It's got a nice little cove. It's a lot calmer on the inside on the south shore of Molokai.
Because the north sounds like this mysterious place to me for a couple reasons. One, the road goes from like the west around the south over to the east, but there's no road that connects around the north, right? No. There's like an airstrip over there with a little village, if I understand, right? Because you flew into that. Your flight brought you from Oahu to that airport.
It was so amazing, the sea cliffs.
Yeah, so I keep hearing highest sea cliffs in the world are here, but it turns out the reason is because a piece of Molokai in ancient days broke away, fell into the sea, right? And so you've got these massive seawalls over there. Mm-hmm. You've got the weather that's unchecked by any other landmass that comes from there, and no road. So it's like, what is going on up there?
At first, I was wondering, like, are there roads to Kalapapa? And there aren't.
There is not.
There are not.
Well, that's the thing, because when we got to the airport, for a moment, we thought our luggage that we had shipped freight went to that airport. So I put it into my phone, like,
can't make it.
How do I get up to the north side? Put it in there. It's like, there are no routes to this location. It's like, oh no. But so that's where the bad weather will come from if it comes.
If it comes, and it still's it has to hit those giant sea cliffs,
right, which are.
You're right.
And anybody know kind of generally how big they are?
I can't remember.
I'm not sure.
I know that I hike up over 3,000 feet in certain spots.
Oh, okay.
So they're
obviously from sea level.
From sea level.
They go that high. Yeah.
It's crazy. We're talking about under the water as well, the topography, and it's just a deep shelf on that north side.
Well, that's another thing I want to bring up too, because where I'm from, and I was explaining to Ku last night, when you go off the coast of Maine, you go hundreds of miles before you hit the continental shelf, where then it suddenly drops off very, very deep. But that's a long, gradual thing. So as you go out, I mean, we go out 35 miles and we're at 300-400 feet of water.
Wow.
So here you don't have to go very far, and it's dropping off to like 1,000 fathoms or whatever.
Oh yeah, in between Maui, Lanai, and Molokai, that channel is
pretty deep.
Because there's this foreboding quality to the sea here that really hit home last night as we watched that Coast Guard plane searching the beach, and it was like, I asked you, how often does this happen? You're like, not that often. I go, like, once a year. You're like, well, more than that.
It's a little more than that.
There's a lot of sense of, and you guys kept saying, to me, don't turn your back on the water, which was funny, because the one time I
turned my back
on the water, and that water comes shooting out of that blowhole and completely
annihilates.
I mean, I got complete, like, as if, like, at the end of the Super Bowl when they dumped the Gatorade over the coach's head, like, I was completely soaked.
I had the camera, and I was like, oh shit,
but the main reason not to turn your back on the sea is not the blowholes, but because a wave come up and pull you in, and now you're in deep water.
Tradition and legend, the ocean's alive.
Yeah, you feel it.
So when she wants to smack you, she'll smack you.
Yeah.
Always teaching lessons,
She's always teaching a lesson. And that's the one thing that we were taught, when we were growing up, never turn your back to the ocean.
Yeah.
Because she can grab you. And I've seen it happen to many people. And over time, I mean, we've lost a lot of people doing exactly what we were doing that day. And it's just because they weren't being present.
Yeah.
They were focused on something else, and they turned their back to the ocean, and the ocean just grabbed them.
You can see how easy that is too. You get all wrapped up in foraging or looking down, and if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, that's the thing. So to set the stage, we're on this rocky coast, and there's some scattering of beach as well, but we're on the rocky coast, and we're gathering sea salt that tide brings water up into the pools, and then the sun dries them out. And I mean, we just harvested so much sea salt yesterday in a couple of minutes. I mean, enough that would last me months. Yeah, and it's just like in a couple of minutes, beautiful white crystals of sea salt. We're gathering the limpets that are called, tell me again? Opihi, which are like a $50 size limpet, which are amazing. And then the purple urchin, which is, I know it sounds like a strip club, but it is actually an animal. Hauki is a really tasty. If you like uni, I mean, this thing is really good. So we're kind of gathering those along the rocky coastline. And there's times where I see like a nice limpet and I just can't help myself but like dangle over the rocks a little bit. And you guys kept saying, I've heard this a lot, like, oh, so-and-so likes to go alone and do this. And it's sort of said like a grandma wants to be out there crabbing all by herself, and there's a sense of don't go do these things alone. So it surprised me because, I think a lot of Americans think, a lot of mainlanders, I should say, think Hawaii, surfing, beaches, all this, they don't realize like the forces that are being played with when you're out in that water,
Yeah, it's just we want to make sure everybody's okay.
Of course.
And like I was saying, the ocean's alive.
It's alive.
You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I was like,
after that, I had to stand up.
I was like crawling down into the pools and jumping in there, and I was thinking that as the water's coming up, and I go in the ocean a lot, so what's safe, what you're pushing, but you always think about that, like if it was bigger swell or if where you're going, if it pulled you out, if you got caught in a current, what would that be? Like a dragon.
If you can make it out, I would go to the sea.
And there's sea caves though, so you can get pulled into a sea cave. A lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, and the underwater hunting is a big thing here too. You
diving,
see a lot of diving. So people are in the water. And like your shark story about that big Galapagos, right? I've been trying. I went to bed thinking about it last night.
That was the craziest. I mean, we were harvesting some fish. There was 4 of us in the water. We also had my wife and my sister, and the women were on shore. They were collecting opihi, and so we kind of used as a unit. We were going together, shore and sea together in one direction,
kind of following each other.
So we can kind of keep an eye on each other as well. We weren't paying attention, but my sister was screaming shark for a while. But there was a shark that was trailing us and must have been hunting us, is what I feel. Because it was weird, because for a while there was a lot of good fish, and then you hear and all the fish are gone, but you hear this it's like, what is that? I finally catch a fish. I go to the float, and we have a stringer on there. We'll connect the fish to that stringer and
get them off your body.
Get it off of me. Bait. So I hook it up on that, and I leave, and the stringer has a 50-foot cord, and that's attached to my cousin. He's pulling that, and while I go up to him, he goes, something's messing with it. I says, what do you mean? Bruh, something's wrong.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, I've been a regular sauna user for over 25 years now, and it's been one of the ways I keep my body healthy, adaptable, de-stressed, and detoxified in an increasingly sedentary, polluted, and chronically stressed out world. They say your skin's like a third kidney, expelling water-soluble waste in the form of sweat, but your skin excretes oils too, so it detoxifies both water-soluble and lipid-soluble toxins. It's just not possible to avoid all of the chemical pollution in our modern era. So if we want to live long, healthy lives, we need strategies to keep our bodies clean and to take some of the burden off our organs of detoxification like the kidneys, liver, and colon. But detoxification is just one of the ways I benefit from my clear light sauna. It's just as important to manage our stress levels too, because our busy, fretful modern lives stimulate our sympathetic nervous system. That's our fight or flight mechanism. Saunas help to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, relaxing and de-stressing us. I enjoy those benefits when I use my clear light sauna too. Clear light saunas are ultra-low EMF, certified eco-wood, infrared saunas with a lifetime warranty, and I've had one in my home for over 10 years. It's my personal sanctuary. They ship right to your door and they're easy to install at home. Best of all, you can get $500 off any clear light sauna or an extra $100 off any sauna that's currently on sale by going to healwithheat.com and using the coupon code WildFed. Again, that's $500 off by using the coupon code WildFed at healwithheat.com. Clearlight is the sauna I trust and have for more than a decade. Check them out at healwithheat.com. Now, back to the show.
I go back to the float where all the fish is, and mind you, there's about maybe 10 to a dozen good-sized fish hanging on it right now. I swim up to it and I'm looking at the fish, and then the fish disappear. You know, something like from Jaws that you see. And it's gone. And I'm like, there's muck in the water, and I'm like, uh-oh. I start swimming backwards. I'm pulling on the line, going back to cousin because I need help. I was too afraid. All I saw was teeth and take everything away.
Oh, so you did see a big set of jaws grab it.
And that snap, and you could feel the pressure because I was probably 20 feet from it.
Wow.
And I was a little afraid. Yes, I backed up.
It's not like you've not been in the water with sharks before, right?
But
it's
this one is a little larger than I ever
You're
been
saying
in the
what,
shark.
17 feet?
At least. Yeah. I mean,
You
I
guys
would
keep saying
say Honda Civic.
The thing is, Galapagos sharks are usually pretty chill and mellow. They're really a great species. But when you're spearing, that's the difference. You have fish on you, you have bait on you, and they're
just looking for the easiest meal possible.
Yeah.
Hopefully that meal's not you.
Right. You just don't want any mistakes or accidents to happen. You know.
The sheer size of him. I mean, a Honda Civic.
With a tail.
You just think about that. That's how big this animal was. And he just looked at each individual one of us. His eyeball, I seen him just look at me, look at him, and look at him. He's like, we got to get out.
Yeah.
We got to get out.
Were you saying somebody started throwing the OP at you?
Yeah, my niece was trying to get our attention.
She could see from up on the rocks.
And she was like, there's no rocks there to really throw. You're on a rock, but all the rocks are like stuck in rocks, because of the lava. So she had the OP, the limpets, and she was throwing OP at us. So basically chumming in the water the entire time.
It's raining meat.
Like, stop doing that.
When we finally get out, I mean, there's 4 of us in the water. One of the floats already lost all its fish. That was easy enough to get onto the rocks. But our other buddy, he still had his float, and we kept pushing the float out. He's yelling at us, "No, my fish!" I says, "No, the shark!
Forget the fish.
Forget the fish. He wants this. Unless you're gonna stay out here." Finally, get him out of the water. Then he sees the shark and he goes, "Oh." No kidding.
Yeah,
it's real. They're out there.
They're out there. They're definitely out there. I mean, you just got to respect the ocean, respect the animals in the ocean. As much as you want them to respect you, they'll do the same because they just live that normal lifestyle of, I'm going to eat.
Yeah. You call them mono?
Mako.
Mako.
Mono.
Yeah, mono.
Yeah,
Shark. And there's a lot of cultural beliefs probably surrounding them, huh?
Well, for some people, that's their amakua, their spiritual animal.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want us hurting them, so to speak.
No, I tried it once when I was much, much younger, when I was like 12. My uncle had some down in San Diego, but no, I mean, I dive with them a lot, and I just enjoy them as a creature. I think
You were saying the other day, too, you're like, listen, dude, I'm not against it. I just don't want that juju.
I don't want that juju. No.
If I'm realized I've been eating shark.
He's like, yeah, you've been eating me. I'm going to maybe eat you. Yes, I want the mana to be really, really even and balanced. So yeah, that's just my personal choice. They're just, once you see them in person and you swim with them, there is a dominance factor. You have to, they'll size you up, and you want to look them in the eye. You want to make sure you're not. You need to pay attention. Sometimes you need to redirect them. They come at you. You have to kind of push them down and go over them. But
all you got is that spear gun and a dive knife too. It's not exactly, if I had to face down a tiger on land, I don't want just like a little poker. Yeah, I'd like something more substantial, but that's what you got down
and in
there.
specific species too, because like Galapagos can be sketchy if there's fish out there, but we have tiger sharks out here, and they can get a little unruly if they're like an adolescent, and they'll come by and like check you. And if you know if that shark's coming, a little bit of a body check. And if you know that they're body checking,
right up against you.
Best get out of the water because they're going to come at you.
Wow.
Have you ever felt the skin of the shark?
Yeah, with my hands. Yeah, but not like while I'm in the water.
So
I've caught them angling.
Okay. Yeah. So there are places that we go on the South Shore that you'll fish this from land, and you can walk in the water about knee deep, and what's around you is hundreds and hundreds of black-tip sharks.
That's what we were eating.
And they'll just rub up against you, and you get all of this, like, if you don't got pants or something that's covering, it's like sandpaper. Just keep rubbing away. I just remember Grandpa used to do that a lot and try to take us out there. No.
Yeah.
I like my toes.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the day of crabbing. So you introduced us to Grandma. We called her Auntie for a while.
Yep.
We started calling her Grandma.
That's why I said, what do we call her? I says, you can call her Auntie, you can call her Grandma, whatever you want to call her, but just don't call her by her name. It's simple. Or go Miss. She ain't gonna listen to you.
Yeah.
She was so excited and focused. She was so ready to get out there.
So excited. So she's 80.
I think she's 86 this year.
And she loves crabbing. When she got out of the car the first morning, I was like, oh. Like, I was like, oh, she's 86. Like, I was ready for
She jumps out of the
very
car.
old lady
First
to get out
one.
of the car. But she hopped out in a little pair of shorts and a T-shirt.
I gotta shoot. So I'm getting my camera together. I'm like, we gotta get this, because I knew Grandma's gone. She is not waiting.
No,
for
she's running
her
with a
production
boogie board with a Tupperware, like a big Tupperware kind of crate bolted to it, and she pulls that behind her, and with her net, and she's just slaying the crabs, slaying crabs.
It was hard. It was hard to
easily.
keep up with her in the morning. She goes.
She's gone.
Yeah.
And she will go. I know sometime in the middle part of the day, she was asking, "Oh, what do you guys want to do? I can keep going all day."
Oh, we finished up and we were out there for
There
hours.
was a point where we were trying to get out of the
like,
water, and she wanted to keep going on those side channels up to the mangroves.
Right. She kept going, and it was like, "Where's Grandma?" Someplace out there. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, the tide was great. I mean,
It was a new moon.
Yeah, it was the new moon with all the limu or the seaweed that came in, kind of overcovered a lot of the stuff. So the crabs are hiding real deep in there, and it's difficult to find them.
She was saying back in the day, they used to not have to do those longer distances to find the crabs. They would just go right out there. There'd be the Samoan crabs and just very plentiful.
Yeah.
And there were some crab species. She's like, yeah, we just don't see them very much anymore.
Yeah, there's a few of them. So the ones that we were gathering is a half or a half and half. It's a half breed of a mud crab and another crab that we got there. And that's why they're a little smaller, but you have similar shells to that Samoan crab with the mud crabs that we were grabbing.
But the mud crab is like 10 times the size.
Yeah.
Right? Multiple times the
A
size.
lot stronger, too.
Are they? I heard their bike. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
But anyway, yeah, so we're picking up those little crabs, and, I saw some really interesting things. I saw that moray eel go up onto dry land. I scooped one in, because we're in really shallow water, walking along. Not really flat. Would you say flats? Kind of.
Yeah.
And a long,
it's
slow
kind
sloping
of a flat,
shoreline.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. Big blue sky, puffy white clouds. Was it Lanai in the background?
Lanai in the background.
And Eric was out there throwing the cast net, pulling a
Yep.
kayak behind him, and he had all this beautiful expanse to himself. It's like what a day. And then we were hoping to find the Samoans. So those are just as, what would you say? They're like probably 7 to 12 inches across the carapace.
So legally, we got to make sure that they're at least 6 inches across, and these ones are definitely beyond that.
They're big.
So.
Yeah, and then when we got back to shore, I guess I'll just tell it like it is. We get back to shore, and you guys are showing me this incredible technique of breaking off some of the ends of their smaller legs, the last knuckle there.
Yes.
Breaking off that articulated part, and then using it as a wedge to get behind the soft area behind their thumb of their claw, and insert that in there like you'd put a wedge in a tree or something, and it keeps them from being able to open their hands. And you guys are obviously doing that because you don't want them to pinch you with those.
Right. I mean,
obviously,
if
why.
you've ever gotten pinched by a Samoan crab or mud crab, you'll know. I'm sure you're never going to want to do that again.
Yeah. So of course I understand that you don't want to. Anyway, the point is, you showed me, and there was one crab left, and I was like, I'll do it.
You're excited?
I'm excited. I want to do this one on my own. That was what it was. I wanted to try it on my own. And he was missing a claw. I remember earlier in the day that claw had broken off of him. Yeah. And it came off pretty easy too. It's like he discarded it almost.
When something's like gonna attack them, or it's a defense mechanism that they do, they actually release that claw.
Okay.
They'll pinch and hold on tight, and then break off the claw, and then they'll go away.
I described it like when they put a boot on your car, like in the city, if like you accumulate parking tickets, they just like leave that thing clamped on your car, and so that's kind of what they do with this claw. So anyway, this crab's got one claw, and I thought if I grabbed him from his far side away from the claw, that I would be able to then break off the leg, and I wanted you guys to be like, "Oh, nice, you did it on your own." Well, that's what I was going for. Good job, Daniel. Instead, he just reached effortlessly around and attached to my middle finger on my left hand, and I just. It's funny because we've told this story like a dozen times, and everyone still laughs every time at me. It's so like good. I just started going.
The pitches that you made was amazing. I mean, the octaves, it went up high and then down.
I was talking to Eric, and he was like, I've never heard those sounds. Never heard those sounds before.
And all I remember was Grandma turning around and was like, what happened?
Everyone's just looking. I made quite a scene, and I'm trying to shake it off. At first, I thought I could just shake my hand really, because he's so big. I thought his weight would I think that's when that happened. Yes. I started shaking, and his body let go of the arm.
Because it started in my kayak, and Eric's kayak was right on the opposite side of you, and you're standing in between both of ours. That crab was in my kayak, and you picked it up, you shook, you spun, facing Eric's kayak, and then I swear it dropped right there. But it was still attached to your finger.
So I thought I still had the whole crab on me. I never even realized. I tunnel visioned on that claw attachment on my finger so that I never saw, like looking through a toilet paper tube. I had no idea the crab was gone. I just saw it was still attached. And Eric was like, now I understand you have to wait for it to let go.
Yeah.
So Eric was sort of pretending to try to force open the claws, but he's like, really, I just had to wait for it to let go.
Yeah, he's saying it's like trying to release as much pressure, but you just have to wait it out.
I think I continued to make those sounds during the entire thing.
Yes.
Because then after now that's starting to turn to laughter. Because then you started getting video.
Yeah, I started.
And I'm like running around, shaking my hand,
And you
high
were
fiving people.
sweating.
Oh yeah, I broke into a huge
Holy
sweat.
cow.
Oh, I was freaked right out. And then Grandma was just like,
loved it.
just like,
Grandma turned red laughing. That's what she
So
did.
funny.
I'll never forget you. I'll never forget this.
Mind you, you have to think about Grandma being only, 4'6"?
Yeah, she's a little lady.
You know, she's so tiny, kind of Asian, and she was red.
She was loving it. She was like, that happened to me once, but I didn't scream. She's like, I just waited. I was like, how long did you wait? She's like, about an hour. I was like, is it on you for an hour? She's like, yeah, but I didn't scream. She's like, I was all alone.
I was all alone.
It's like, man, she just thought
She was
I
trying to be polite a little bit, and she was like, "That's so funny." No, not too
She's
funny.
never gonna.
No.
Yeah, it's
funny.
pretty funny. I'm sorry to laugh, but it's very funny. Yeah, she's amazing. And so then yesterday she showed us how she processes those little crabs, and made this incredible dish
So good.
out of the bodies.
Just the body, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like sort of a little bit of the cartilage, I guess the chitinous material, the shell material.
Part of the shell material on the
and
base.
you've got like a nice jewel of meat on either side of
Yeah.
that you sort of put in your mouth, squeeze, and kind of suck that out.
kind of chew it and suck it and pull the shell part out, and all that meat goes into.
But it was raw and just processed. Like there was one dish that had the kukui nuts, and you guys call that preparation?
It's an inamona. Inamona is the kukui nut added with a little bit of chili, a little bit of salt. You know, her mixture is a little wet. It's a nice little wet mixture, and then she just adds it in.
And then the other one was the same product, but that was treated with like sriracha. And
Yeah, she did it a little spicy.
And then we had that served with rice, and that was really nice. So.
Yeah, I like the spicy one. That was so good.
Yeah. So now I have this like crab technique. You know, 1 for closing their claws, 2 for not getting attached to them, and then 3 for how to prepare them. But anyway, that was awesome. And you know one thing I found funny about Grandma? She's like, she eats some stuff that everybody thinks is kind of weird, right?
Yes.
The rest of the family's like, oh, Grandma likes all this weird. But then if you bring up something she thinks is weird, she's like, oh, gross. I will not eat that.
Chicken.
Yeah. I don't eat bread.
She doesn't eat burger. I was like, wow. But she'll have a steak,
Yeah.
and it's got to be rare. Though. Like, she'll
yeah.
send it back if it's medium rare.
She's a carnivore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It needs to be moving. Still bleeding.
Yeah, I really appreciate that about her.
And
It was really cool.
I believe you guys had a crab out there on the ocean too
We
that
did.
you got to try.
Yeah, and that was one of the crabs she said she sees a lot less of now.
Yes.
But we ate that one raw together.
Yeah. She loves that crab. So
Yeah.
I did see a few of them out there, but they were a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
She would have said, "Grab them." I would have said no, and that's why I didn't grab them. I wanted to
Let them
kind of let them grow.
Let them grow. The other thing I wanted to, and I think probably what the people listening to this have heard the most about Molokai is the axis deer herd out here. I mean, that was what kind of got us here initially, working with you. And so, so that people know, you guide axis deer hunts and also black buck antelope. And this western side of the island in particular, which has conditions like what a lot of people think of western big game hunting. You guys are all really, I mean, everybody I've been talking to is really dialed in on the long range shooting piece and routinely taking shots at 200 to 400, probably even beyond maybe. Same kind of style, high point, glassing,
the whole
stalking in on animals, just like that, what people think of as a western big game hunting, except that you're overlooking the ocean.
And you're up high and you can see the ocean.
And other islands. It's awesome. It's awesome. But the herd here is so big that you're essentially tripping over sheds and deadheads all day long. The number of sheds that we picked up doesn't really make sense almost.
Yeah.
Like that's just not a thing that happens anywhere else, where in a day you might come across 36 sheds as a group or something. And that's not counting the deadheads that you see, because the drought seems to be getting to some of these bucks as well. So all that to say, an enormous herd of axis deer out here. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
So the axis deer excuse me, the axe deer got here in the middle 1800s. It was a gift from the emperor of Asia, and it started, I think it was either 7 or 8 animals. That in the record books that's kind of the two numbers that I see all the time. But it was 4 does, 2 spikes, a buck, and if there was an 8th one, there may have been something else. But that's what I've always remembered to see. to today, what we have today is 50 to 70,000 easily.
It's crazy.
From those, just that little genetic pool.
So
Right.
crazy.
But it's all the same genetic though. So you're starting to see the animal shrink in size, body size.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of interbreeding that's happening.
Right.
But based upon the amount of numbers we have, you're also starting to see that we're losing the island because of the erosion.
Yeah.
And then you're starting to see we're losing the ocean because of the same erosion.
Yeah, because that sand or that dust goes out and
Down.
then covers the reefs.
Right. When it rains, everything runs downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as we were talking about a little while ago, our clothes and our gear, our cameras, our guns, like everything is covered. I mean, you can see it right here on the gimbal case over there. This is a fine powdery red dust here, the color of rust. It is rust. It's iron oxide, right? And you do see that it's eroding pretty heavily out here right now. At the same time, because in some places it'll be like, this is an invasive species, let's eradicate. But what I'm hearing out here from everybody is we like eating axis deer.
we love it.
Everybody, not everybody, but because I do see some beef and stuff in the store. But it seems like most people we talk to eat a lot of axis deer.
Yeah.
And you see...
Oh, yeah. Not grandma. She wants steak.
And crabs. But you got skulls on everybody's fences or hanging from the rafters, and just it seems like it's a pretty embedded in the culture. So it seems like management is the goal. Not
That's the biggest thing is managing.
Yeah.
If we can get the herd down, to a much more manageable level, we would have more of the island as well to ourselves.
Yeah.
Be honest, I don't have a number in mind. It's just the numbers out there right now. If you're looking at a male to female thing, it's probably 50 does to 1 male. If we can get that down to 20 does to 1 male, that would be amazing.
So one of the challenges must be that people who come here to hunt want to hunt bucks, I imagine.
Yep.
Man, I just got no issues shooting doe. I just love eating does, and there's so many of them here. But it's amazing even with how much hunting pressure there is, because it seems like there's a pretty significant hunting culture here amongst the people who are locals, and they're not making really a dent in this population.
No. Well, and it's unfortunate because I feel that we put ourselves in this predicament. Generations ago, it was all strictly subsistence, so you're shooting the biggest body, not the biggest horn. We're feeding the family. We're not making horn soup.
Right.
As generations went down, they're seeing from the Western culture, oh, these big horns, these guys are shooting big trophies. Kids start shifting their ways and started shooting just horns. So from a manageable number back then to, we're going to start shooting all these horns, and now we're taking out all the male DNA. You got hundreds of females. All you need is 1 male to seed these hundreds of females, and we got hundreds of more babies.
Yeah.
So we kind of did it as the culture.
Yeah.
Now we're trying to re-educate the culture that, hey, maybe we start shooting more does.
Yeah.
Does taste better anyway, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with this thing sticking out of the head and moving around.
Yeah. Exactly. Or trying to find one all day.
Yeah.
So. I'd always heard about the axis deer issue over on Maui especially, and been on Molokai, being based on Oahu. And this is my first time on Molokai, and it was so apparent the first night or morning we were driving out. You see them everywhere.
Yeah, and you see mostly, we were seeing yearlings, like driving from the hunting camp to meet you in the mornings, which is like a 5-minute, 10-minute drive. we would see hundreds.
Yeah.
Well, maybe 100
Blew my
yearlings.
mind. Blew my mind.
Just crossing in groups, sometimes groups of like 20.
20, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just, I mean...
And they're crossing directly over the main highways. And
Collisions
our
are a huge
highways are
thing,
completely dark.
Yeah,
We
you're
don't
telling
have
us
those
about some
lights.
collisions that have been
Yeah.
happening in your family.
So
A lot of cars you see have a little bit of damage to the front
Yeah.
end, you know?
Like, I mean, my son totaled 2 cars in like 3 months or
Yeah.
4 months. I just lost a car recently. I'm trying to rebuild her. You know, I hit 9 deers at once.
Is that the Land Cruiser?
The Land Cruiser, yeah. I mean, I try to avoid the animals that was coming out of the right, so I kind of went left, and there was a left. There was a lot of animals came out of that area.
Yeah.
They all met in the middle of the road. So
With you, yeah.
it was like a bowling ball, and the deers were the pins.
Yeah, man. One thing too that comes to mind, because you're just been a great guide and
you.
committed. Like opportunities where I was like, oh, I wonder, you know, not knowing you yet. It's like, is he gonna want to try to like call it? Is he gonna want to like squeak out of this a little early? But no, you guys have a work ethic and a commitment to your clientele that's awesome. Yeah, you did.
Oh, a ton.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Grant screwing up all the shots. No, in reality, I came out here feeling really confident as a shooter, but not having a lot of experience shooting past 200 yards.
Right.
And it really made me have to dial myself back and dial myself in a lot, because those first few I mean, I probably shot twice as many rounds as I made hits, you know, and that was embarrassing to me. And
Well, the first thing that you told me, you never miss.
Did I say that?
Yes,
Did I said that to you?
I never miss. Oh.
Really? I said that? Dang.
Molokai will teach you.
Yeah, Molokai will teach you a lesson.
Humbled me, and so I mean, it felt like from the crab biting me to getting hit by the water coming out of the blowhole to missing, not just missing, also trying to fire on an empty chamber and missing the most perfect specimens of the animal in the most perfect shot range at, you know, perfect distance in the most perfect positions.
It's like, Daniel, shoot it. Go, go, go. Click.
Click or hit the ground. Yeah, that was just good for me. Honestly, I'm just going home here a better person. Like, you know, you kept saying to me, a patient man is a humble man. And I'm wondering about that phrase because I've never heard anyone say it. It's different than what I'm used to hearing, because almost implicitly built into the saying is the idea that the goal is to be a humble man. And I'm not from a place where being a humble man is even something people really talk about. You know, you do in like the spiritual end of culture, but typically you don't hear people striving for humbleness.
Right.
You know? So if it was like a patient man's a more successful man or something, like that's the kind of stuff you'd hear, like a more profitable man or like a more bigger badass or something, but like, oh, a humble man. Where'd that come from? You say that? Did you get that from somebody?
Years ago, when I was a kid, my mom's father, my grandfather, they had a place out on the east side, and he had this little putting range, right? And in this putting range, there was this little statue that said "the humble man." And I remember I asked my grandfather, "What is that?" He goes, "The patient man is the humble man." I never understood it. But it was something that stayed in my brain. It stayed in the back of my mind as long as I could remember from that point. But as I grew up, I kind of started to get it. You know, the patient man is the humble man, and the humble man is the patient man. And it is okay to just take your time.
Yeah.
I think the islands teach you that so much.
To relax.
Relax. There's that, you know, they say island time. There's a certain sense, and I think you guys really saw that on your trip here. It was how laid back it is, and how you things happen in their own time.
Yeah.
Going with the flow.
And happened very beautifully. Yeah, it's weird. It's like one part of me wants to be like, yeah, like it's not like I haven't experienced that in my lifetime, but then it's even more here, you know? So it was like, oh, I got to recalibrate to a whole nother level of chill here. But at the same time, everything happened. It wasn't like the way that I would almost worry that, oh, if we don't plan this, if we don't have this all dialed in, and then so I came here with a schedule, of course, because we're filming a TV show. It's like we're coming here with an agenda, and we got to go film another one after, and another one after that. And so, you're like, and in a place where it's like a lot of meetings, a lot of phone calls, and a lot of like this kind of work, and then showing up, being like, all right, I'm ready to go. Here we go. Here's the itinerary. So that was really good too. Just relaxing and seeing how things did unfold really beautifully. But I could imagine that there's a lot of people who come out here who cannot let go of that, and it must be really hard. I've
had a few.
Must be.
Oh, it's very, very intense. Yeah.
It's more about the energy you're bringing to each situation, right? Yeah.
I mean, if you come in with a kind of a negative attitude or a negative feel to it, the rest of that day is going to be the same way.
Mm-hmm. Or even just wanting to like dominate nature. It's like a different, like the Aina, as they say, is the land that provides. Like it's something that I think it happens when it happens. You have to be patient.
Right.
Well, what was interesting, again, with those shots, in particular, the 2-axis bucks where I had no round in the chamber, and they walked from 600 yards to 100 yards and stood broadside for me to shoot them. And I went click on that empty chamber, and they ran. And when the black buck antelope walked out at 200 yards and stood broadside, just glimmering that black, just looking so good, its big old horns. He just stood there for me to shoot him, and I rushed it. And missed. Both of those lessons for me, or the kind of what I got out of that was that even if everything is perfect, it's like, because the thing about that is I couldn't go, well, Grant, it was your camera moving, or the wind was bad, or it's just me. Like there's like nothing but me, and it came from me not slowing down enough and taking my time and being patient and relax.
After all these years,
Grant, get your camera out of the water. So yeah, those are powerful lessons, because I will never be able to get out of my mind the way that black buck looked standing there broadside, or those two deer.
Those two bucks look so nice.
It was like out of a cartoon the way they walked up and stood there.
How close? It was like,
Phil.
We're just gonna go right next to the truck.
Yeah, and let you shoot us. So
it would have been really easy to load him.
It's been
It was right there next to the
put
truck.
him right in the truck. So instead, what I had to do was, hike down into the bottom of a deep ravine, and
come out at 10:30 at night.
A lot of yes.
She said, "Hey, we're gonna go this direction."
Yeah.
That's what was cool about it, though. It made one of the stories really rich, but also you had to go a little farther. We had to go a little bit. It was a little harder.
And I think what I really appreciated out of it was you didn't battle the flow. You went with it. No, you did. You beat it yourself just a little, but we kept you out of that, right?
Yeah, you kept saying, patience, Danielson.
Patience.
So, yeah, those lessons, I think now when I think about that idea of patience, I'll picture those two shooting scenes and those beautiful animals that go on living on the landscape because they didn't come home with me. No. And it was almost like them being like, ha ha, see?
And this is very awkward because it never happens like that with those axes that come across that section. They are always way down below.
Yeah.
So it's
no, I felt like a spiritual thing took place there. It was like,
I was like, wow.
And it was like, to me, it was like the island being like, see, like, okay, you think you're so good? Like, here you go. And just, and like, watch me mess it up. You know what I mean?
Yep. Like more drama.
We got so much content.
Yeah. And it's so hard to showcase, I think, in film production, a story completely, because it is very difficult hunting. There's so many, they're long days, very long days, and it's a lot of effort, not only just to be hunting, but we're shooting it as well with cameras. We have, me and Grant trying to be as camouflage as possible, and
That's the thing too. And that's one of the hard things about being the host, because people look at it and they're like, "What an idiot! Just do this," and you're like, "Dude, I have to wait for two cameras to be all set up."
You don't understand. He's standing way up there in the open, and then he's standing on the bottom down here. So they gotta both be ready.
Yeah. And Daniel, you're getting locked on, but then me being on the telephoto lens, these deer, sometimes they're pretty far off. They camouflage in. So to even lock in with the camera, we have to make sure we're in step together.
Yeah. A lot of times we were, 5 people? Yeah. And that's a crew to hunt with. But anyway, I mean, we did it, and it went great, and there'll be beautiful episodes, and I'm really excited. In fact, the challenges with this much beautiful content is to cut 222-minute episodes.
Yeah, they're just so much content.
Yeah. Luckily, you and I, Grant, we kind of turn in the footage now to Cody, our editor, and we don't have to battle with deciding ourselves what's going to hit the editing floor, I want to come back a little bit to the guiding piece, and then I want to talk to you, Phil, a little bit about how your relationship to hunting after this trip. But I just want to make sure to talk about the opportunity out here, because I think some people are going to hear this and be like, "Oh, wait, I would like to go experience that hunt," and there's a lot of room for that, right?
Yeah, there's always room.
One thing that strikes me, though, is and something I've learned out here, is that everybody advertising themselves as guides doesn't mean they're necessarily a fully legal operation. No. And so I want people to know, well, first, obviously, I'm giving you a huge endorsement. I mean, I've had an incredible experience with you.
Oh, yeah.
But you guys are here, and there's bow hunting and rifle hunting, right? And there's the black buck antelope, which are just this awesome, small but just beautiful, cool animal.
The good thing is we saw 4 on this trip.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't get it. So, hey, guys, there's 4 black bucks.
Yeah. There's a black buck out there. That's gorgeous. So that herd, and obviously we see dozens and dozens of the ewes as well. So this is just this beautiful animal who I think you guys are telling me it was a safari here. And this is basically Jurassic Park style. They've escaped it, and the safari's gone, and they now live here on the island.
So in the 80s, going into the 90s is when there was a safari. Well, from the late 70s to the 90s, there was a safari.
Yeah.
We had pretty much all the animals except for big cats. Giraffes, zebras, emus, black buck, ballberry sheep, kudu, elands. A lot of the animals kind of escaped. Over some time, hunters that got them, taking care of them and put them down. The ones that we couldn't take care of was the black buck, because they just reproduce and they're always moving. So the population and the herd on that is actually getting a lot bigger. And we've been selling a lot more of them, those hunts and those experiences this past year. I think I've done about 9 this year. No, I don't. I know for our farm area, 5 years ago, it was under 100 head, and I think we're closer to about 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just at your family area?
Yeah, in our small farm area, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's clearly a much smaller herd, but there was no shortage of these animals, and it's a very fun hunt.
I mean, we've seen them all the way across that whole landscape.
Yeah, and what's neat about it is it's an exotic animal, but it's living really wild here. It's not like these are high fences. No. I mean, they're just out there and
free, yeah.
Yeah,
they're definitely crossing fences.
They're very easily crossing fences and are going under them.
That's what's crazy. Yeah.
So just like the pronghorn antelope, they don't jump fences. These ones, it's the same thing. They don't jump fences. They'll go underneath them. They'll find a hole.
And the other cool thing about them and the access out here is these are year-round hunts, right? These are not like a regular native game species that would have a season.
No, these are year-round.
People could come out any time of year to hunt with you guys.
We're hunting all year round. Trophies may not always be there year round, but there's always animals to be harvested.
I think for the people listening to this show are primarily like myself. They're like when those black bucks, that black buck walked out. I mean, I want him. He's gorgeous. I want him. But like I'm really there for the meat is really the thing, And so for people who are like me, especially, this is like a really cool opportunity. Normally I kind of wait to the end, but just tell people your business so people, if they want to like pause this and go look you up.
Well, Cool Outdoor Adventures, you connect with me on Instagram. The website's actually being built now. My partner, my sister company is Go Hawaii Outfitters. They're doing bookings as well for us. And other than that, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and so anybody who wants to contact us at WildFed, we'll get them in touch
Definitely.
with you too, because it's
the website is actually being built. I'm trying to work on that situation
Yeah.
now. This year is my first year taking over.
out on your own with it. Yeah.
So Go Hawaii's been here for a number of years, and I've been with Go Hawaii and doing this for just over 5 years now.
Yeah.
And he wants to move on to a little bit bigger, better things and become a bookie more so, as well as still contributing to helping to bring the population down to Molokai.
Yeah.
So they're working on that, and I'm just going to be the boots on the ground guy here.
Yeah. Well, it's like, again, it's just this really unique opportunity. It feels to me almost like how somebody might think about if they went to Alaska to hunt. It's like really remote. It's like there's not a lot of people here. You're having an experience that feels, I'll just always now think of Hawaii in general, but especially Molokai as its own country. It's its own place.
Yeah.
It does not feel like the United States here, except that I can spend US dollars and people speak English, but very much its own. Because I said to you, is there like a hierarchy of it's like, feels like Molokai first, then we're Hawaii, then we're part of the United States. But
so
like,
if I went traveling, people, oh, where are you from? Hawaii. Oh, what island? Now, if I say Molokai and they're like, oh yeah, then we can have a little more conversation because you understand that
context.
Molokai is
its own thing.
It's its own thing here. Exactly. If they don't know about it,
or they're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been
most people be like, is that the one that you have to be invited to?
Yeah, that's what people said things like that to me.
It's very very cultural. A lot of Native Hawaiians, and just having been to the other islands, there's such a distinct difference between Molokai that I've sensed, and it's absolutely amazing.
And it's good because you've been to the other islands. You see that lifestyle, that culture. There is culture, but I feel the culture is more deep here.
Yeah,
very much.
There's
untouched,
yes,
more untouched.
Yes, there you go.
The connection to the days of hunting and gathering are so alive here. Like, it's still happening to a degree, and then even if somebody doesn't do it, they still know what all those foods are.
Yeah.
They still like know all the stuff. It's not like lost to time the way it is in so many places. And it feels like if you were here, I can't even imagine just 20, 50, 100 years ago what it would have been like here, how different it would be.
I still look at there's old pictures from like my grandfather's times, before you seen all these trees that we have out here. It was just open plains because it was cattle country. It was pineapple fields, all of those times. There are pictures of my grandfather and his brothers all on the saddle, on horseback, and they're stretching out probably like this 33-inch buck. They roped it.
Wow.
But the landscape, it was nothing what you see here today.
Yeah.
It was just grass. There was no trees. I mean, because I think that picture was taken similar to where we were at, and all that trees and that brush that was there, it was just grass because you could see Lanai in this picture clearly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people from the mainland or just around the world, visitors that come here, they think of like Hawaii as white sandy beaches and palm trees and beauty jungle, and it's definitely
people still living
there.
in grass shacks, running around in grass skirts and stuff like that.
But there's this whole other element of like ruggedness, plains, cowboy, paniolo.
Paniolo,
It's cool. It's very unique. You get so many different views into Hawaii.
Well, like here, one thing that's like the guys are kind of badasses. There's a lot of like trucks that are kind of lifted and big wheels on them, and there's like, a lot of guys I see look like, okay, they probably done some MMA. It's not just all like, yeah, bro, surfing stuff. No, like there's a rugged culture here, I mean, that commands some respect.
Yeah, and I think that, respect across all islands is there because there's a unique dynamic between the tourists and really leaving Hawaii, you know, and leaving it the way it is.
I just saw that bumper sticker that because you said it to me a couple times. Don't change Molokai. Let Molokai change you.
There you go.
Love that.
And you probably see the other one come visit, spend, go home.
But now the big one on the main street there, they got those two crossed out just as they go
home.
Every time I see that, I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm almost out of here.
I feel that now that saying visit, spend, go home, you may have a little more understanding.
Oh yeah.
You know, and that other saying is let Molokai change you, don't change Molokai, because we love Molokai for what it is, and a lot of people will come here visit. Ooh,
you know what these people need?
Yeah, exactly that, and that's what the locals battle against the most. I mean, the meaning is there. It's a great meaning. The way it's coming across, maybe a little strong, that delivery, but now you understand.
Yeah. Ultimately, I feel like for a visitor who's interested in hunting out here, it's the most exotic experience. The most, not just exotic. That's not really the word. It's like one of the most authentic experiences you could really have, you know, and still be technically in the United States. And so
I think a big part of that is being willing to open up to being more an observer rather than bringing your own thoughts and ideas into the place. And it's a testament to Ku and the mana you guys bring, the energy you bring to this whole experience for us, is that if you're open to it, Molokai will show itself. And I think that's what happened with us. And if a visitor...
At first, we came with a schedule.
Yeah. you gotta let... Nope.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I would say, too, don't come if you're an asshole. Yeah. Or, don't come if people tell you, hey, man, you need to chill out more. Probably do that first and then come out here. Don't come out here with a big agenda.
See, most people come here for, a 2-day hunt. And this was special. You guys been here for over a week now. Yeah. So you got to immerse yourselves a little more into the culture, a little more into the land itself. People that come here for the 2 days, they don't have that opportunity to make that switch.
Especially if it's first thing in the morning, you're hunting, you're not done till late, so you never really get to experience the people and the places.
And what had happened with our situation hunting has happened a lot of times with other people, you know. So it's not just you. It's just...
It comes out here and can't shoot.
It's not the fact of not can't shoot.
I abandoned my rifle by the second day.
Slowing down. Yeah. Taking that moment. And I stop and I have to explain to them a little. You know, same thing. Right. You know, the patient man is a humble man. And I think you just need to slow down, take a look at everything, allow Molokai to present you with something that you're going to need versus what you really want.
Yeah.
And if they take that in and they're okay with that, Molokai always offers something. You know, you've seen it.
Yep.
Yeah. Definitely.
Firsthand.
Definitely. You know what? I want to talk about one more thing. It's sort of a quick shift in topic, but I just don't want to leave this out today. I want to talk about you describing what it was like for you to go out west and hunt.
Oh, man.
And what it was like to climb hills and look over them and not see the ocean.
So first off, I went out to Wyoming. Very first, I was blessed. Very first trip out of state to do a hunt, you know, and I was so stoked to go. I did so much research. I was trying to prepare for the weather, prepare for everything I could. No matter what I did, I was never prepared. I'm coming from Hawaii, going to someplace there's snow. Not prepared. But mentally, I was there. Physical aspects of things wasn't based upon the cold. Oh, God, that's cold. 21 degrees, 9 days, sleeping in a regular tent. That was crazy. But every time that I climbed up a hill, I'm expecting to... It's like here in Hawaii, I would climb up a hilltop or a mountaintop, and I'm looking over and I can see the ocean. Yeah, I looked over, and I just saw this ocean of land. And it stretched for miles and miles, and I was like, oh my God. I felt so lost and, you know, just put your head down and keep moving. Just keep moving. We gotta keep going. We're trying to get into the animals. It was fun though. I'm planning on doing it again.
I can't imagine. I've been trying to reframe perspective of what it would be like to have lived a good portion of my life on this kind of a size piece of land
on a
with
rock
so
in the middle
much
of the ocean.
sea. Yeah. Yesterday, Eric was talking about leaving for the military. And, you know, because I think another cool thing out here, you guys are very careful not to speak pidgin around us. But I kind of, like, part of me is like, oh, I want to overhear it.
Yeah, I love
it's
it.
so cool to hear.
It's hard, honestly, it's hard for me. I mean, I can turn it on and off at any time, but it's hard for me. It all depends on the company that I'm keeping at that time.
I bet.
And I can just blend right into that.
Sure. Because I'll hear you every once in a while turn to somebody and speak pidgin, you know. But then, like, Rocky, who speaks pidgin, right?
Dude.
And
Rocky's thick.
yeah, like it's like, okay, I'm not getting everything he's saying. I know that there's words that I just won't recognize, even though there's so much of it's English that it's not hard to understand the basic gist of it. But you know, like Eric was talking about going to the army and actually not even knowing how to speak, you know, and then he described it as, I've lived my whole life on this little prison. In a way of, you know, thinking like surround, and he's like, I mean that literally, like this was a penal colony at one point, or they were like sending people here, and he's like, you know, to go into this vast land mass and then not know, only having that perspective and not knowing how to communicate. He's like, I really needed people to help me and like teach me how to even communicate with people. It's just like this other fascinating idea, like I've been trying to imagine. Because for me, what's shocking is climbing up in a hill and being like, oh, there's water on all the four sides of this, and it just goes on forever. That's as shocking as what it must be like to be on that much land.
Climbing up, there's land on all four sides of me.
Your body's just so used to there being water, right?
Yeah.
So,
You think differently of how far in the middle of the Pacific we are out here.
Yeah, it's about a couple thousand miles.
Yeah,
right?
it's far.
But as you've pointed out to us, Phil, like there's islands that stretch all the way over to Southeast Asia. I mean, if you really dig in on the map.
That was my misconception initially. It was like, oh, you're just in the middle of the Pacific with nothing else out here. But it's expansive, the landmass, when you really think of the island chains. The Hawaiian Islands aren't just the 8 islands, right? It stretches and stretches and stretches. Do you know how many?
I know there's hundreds of islands.
And there's quite a connection here. Another cool part of the culture here is there's a lot of, it seems like Filipino, Chinese, Tahiti, Samoa, Japanese. Yeah, so the culture is very influenced by
we have a
Polynesian.
And it was very like different historic time frames, because you had the Polynesian voyagers from Tahiti, Samoa, that whole time frame. But then the plantation era, I was talking to Grandma about that. And
then you got the Filipinos. And the cowboys with the Portuguese. So
and you guys say Portuguese? Portuguese, which is like you say it like they say it, which makes sense because we say it in the way like our English version of Portuguese.
Yes, Portuguese.
But it makes more sense that you guys pronounce it like it was said, like you heard it, right, from them. That's really neat.
That's why a lot of us growing up, we couldn't really write. We can read because, I mean, it's there. But when we're trying to write down what we're saying, it came out in pidgin. And we would write that, or we're saying that, we're saying that, D-A-T. You know, and everything was the kind. What is the kind?
The kind.
That's the kind. This is
everything,
the kind. Everything is the kind. So we would write down, the kind, and
that's amazing.
What are we speaking about in your?
Well, that's just like what we were talking about with the schedules and the phone calls and the meetings and all this stuff, where it's like, no, it has to be this. This is the format. It has to be this way, and it's like, well, kind of missing out on a lot of what life is about if you're too regimented. And so I like the pidgin a lot. I kind of wish people felt comfortable to speak it more around me, because
it's just like I said, it all depends on the company. It instantly triggers in my brain that it just does it.
I'm surprised at how much it sounds like Caribbean islands to me when I hear it. That I was like, wow, that's weird. It sounds like cool. When I'm in the Bahamas or something, a very similar sounding dialect.
They have their own language. They're broken language as well. That's what this is a broken English. And it contains Hawaiian. It contains English. It may have a little bit of Japanese, Chinese, some Filipino in it. It all depends what we're speaking about, but it's all in one language.
It's just got something really like authentic and real and soulful about it that's like a really nice to hear,
It was a language that was created by a bunch of people. That's all it was, a bunch of different races.
That's cool. Phil, you came out here to hunt with us, and you'd obviously filmed a little hunting, I think, and you'd been around, you'd done some spear fishing, and you've been at the sort of margins of the hunt world and whatnot, so it's not a shockingly new experience. But you seem to be leaving here, like, really wanting to.
Oh, I'm amped.
Yeah,
I'm amped. I mean, I grew up in upstate New York. I've lived across the country, lived in Nebraska for quite a few years, so I was around gun culture, hunting culture. But my family, we never hunt. So I never was
vegetarian, right?
Grew up vegetarian. Yeah, my parents were vegetarian, kind of hippies from the late '60s and '70s in New York, and we were definitely homesteaders. We had a big garden. We were all about making our own food, making our own flour and everything, and so it's very much instilled in my mind of living off the land. My dad was big into foraging, so he would always have his book, and we'd be out there, picking plants from the land. And I lived in the Pacific Northwest in Washington and Oregon, so there's also a pretty big hunting culture there. But being out in here in Hawaii and seeing that the living off the land is so ingrained and embedded in the culture of Hawaii, and you see it in the ocean. It's so vibrant. There's so much food that's there. There's so many fruit trees. If you're just on a hike, you'll see like a guava tree. There's so much
mangoes,
like so much. And so I think being on this trip, it was pretty eye-opening and really an amazing experience to go through that process. I learned so much from you, Daniel, from you, Ku. And yeah, I'm just so
Grant's
amped.
like, hey.
And you, Grant. But yeah, just I think through the pandemic is when it really hit me hard, because I was out on Oahu when, you think of the hurricanes and you'll have like the shelves go barren in the grocery store. When you're like, okay, look, we are way out here. And if, we have about 2 to 3 days worth of food for the island. So if the boats were to stop, that would be a thing. And so during the pandemic, when like a lot of people, there's chaos across the world. And so I think a lot of people in Hawaii felt that like, okay, there's a certain sense of isolation here. So that's when I started connecting more with farms, getting my hand in the dirt more, spear hunting more. And so it led to this thought process of really wanting to look into hunting and get into it. So when this production came up, it was like the universe just put that out there to say, go on this experience and 100%.
And you have from camera work, the camera work is so similar to hunting, where it's like you still call it shooting. You're dealing with optics, you're dealing with glass, you're dealing with telephoto. It's a really similar discipline in certain regards. And so doing it all this week, I could just see like if you swap that camera for a rifle, you're going to do just great. And I think when you've got a little bit of foraging and you've got access to farms and all that, the hunting piece brings it all together, because now you have red meat. Like once you have red meat, you're like, you're good, man. You're good.
The interesting thing too, I mean, having worked with National Geographic, a lot of marine biologists and different groups as a filmmaker, I definitely consider myself a bit of a conservationist as well. And so there's this idea, I think, out there of hunting and killing something is maybe taking away.
Yeah.
And what I realize, especially at home, is how much hunting is conservation if done in the right way. Because you're more connected to the wildlife, the land, and how everything interacts. And so that to me was so apparent.
You know what it's like and this is something the general public who's become, either they're on the fence about hunting or they're anti-hunting, not because they've ever decided it, but because it's just been inculcated through culture to them. It's like, as culture's turned its back on hunting or whatever, one thing that they don't understand is that it's sort of like citizen ecology or citizen biology, where the hunters are the task force of the biologists. The biologists set management goals for the numbers of animals that they want, that they feel can be sustained on the landscape, and that, based on carrying capacity and social carrying capacity and all that, they decide like, okay, well, this is our goal for the herd. And the ones who actually go out and execute that mission are the hunters. And so not only is all that money going into the conservation and paying for the biologists, but it's like how we get those management numbers. You know? So you're like, for biologists.
Right.
And it's the balance that's so important. You see it with the axis deer. You see some of the effects that's happening with the erosion. And so if those numbers aren't balanced, you're going to have other elements of the ecosystem that are affected. And so it's a delicate balance that I think if everyone's working together and there's like adequate conversations around it and people are open, hunting is definitely something that after this trip I'm going to be gunning for.
I'm just stoked because
awesome.
We have a couple goals, Grant and I, with this project. It's like one of them is like developing friendships and a network through it. I want, when this show is done, I want to have like friends left all over the place who share sort of similar ideas and values and stuff. And that's like a big thing that I felt happened, Koo, like getting to connect with you. It's like, yes, like cool, like beyond the show, that's like a big part for me. And then a big part for me with what we do too is like wanting to bring people either back to or into this world of wild food. And that was a surprise for it, that happened with you, and it was not, that's what we're trying to do often with the audience. But it was like, seeing you get excited and realizing like everything we were doing, you're like, I'm just gonna be able to do this on Oahu.
That was the coolest thing. I mean, the salt, I could just do that right next. Go right next door. The limpets, LPE. I think that was really cool having this experience, just being island over.
Right.
And Koo, you're so dialed into the land that I'm realizing like, like this, I can implement a lot of these things as well. And I think,
and then you know what's going to happen too? You may set a trend there, allow people to start foraging for themselves, start maybe setting a little group that people are starting to grow upon and spread the knowledge.
And that's what I've sensed coming out of the pandemic is that in Hawaii there's this cool movement for just subsistence, like being able to sustain our food system here in Hawaii, because 2 days of food is ridiculous. We shouldn't have to import all of our food. It makes the cost of living way more expensive. It makes food way more expensive at the grocery store.
Oh God.
And so the idea, it's like we live in this beautiful place with amazing growing conditions, and we can sustain these islands with the food that's grown and produced here and bring the cost of food down, as well as just make it more and more accessible. And so that mentality that's happening right now I find so inspiring, and meeting people like you, Daniel, and like you, Grant, coming from a different part of the world, having that same sort of mentality. It's not just out here, it's a global thing. So to your point of like a global network of people that have the same vision, have the same sort of mentality is really, really cool.
Yep, I agree. What do you think, Grant? You've been awfully quiet this week. Ever since you placed the camera lavs and lens into the salt water, haven't really. But you got that GoPro shot, bro.
You got the GoPro.
Oh yeah, there's the footage where you see the shadow. Yeah, he leans over and you see the camera just heading down to the water.
Reel.
I'm flying the drone and Grant's like, Phil, and I look over and I just see it dripping. It's like, no, I need support. I need help.
The new camera.
I'm like, so I leave the drone up there, go over there. I'm like, this doesn't look good.
Yeah, he came over. I knew the drone was.
You're fine, bro.
Yeah,
you're fine.
Well, you were like, we got to get this thing into rice. I'm like, bro, there's salt. Like, it's not because fresh water.
We're also way out there too, so it's like not like we were able to just turn around.
Back. And Grandma was not about to leave for some camera,
No.
But it was
like, camera?
You were just so downcast the whole walk out. You're like, ho hum.
Yeah, you're bummed.
Yeah, pretty bad. But I thought, because the drone was in the air, I thought, he comes over, he's like, we have a bit of a crisis happening. And I was like, the drone went into the drink. I was like, no problem. We got all that drone footage. It's going to be fine. And then he's like, when it was a cam, I was like, what's that supposed to mean? Why should you be? But I was like, I don't need to say it. That tendency to be like, Grant, you got to be more careful. Something like that. I was like, I don't need to say anything. This dude knows. Like I felt so bad for how you felt about it.
These sort of productions are they're run and gun, and you're in the environment, you're in the elements, and it just, if you're shooting in this way, I've shot in a lot of remote environments out in the mountains with snow, 30-foot waves swimming, Nat Geo shoots. This was one of the most intense environments and shoots for the cameras that I've ever been on. And I think it kind of goes without saying, like, you didn't do anything wrong necessarily. These things when you're working that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it's also inevitable that we'll experience these things, you know, so. Anyway, I mean,
You're probably not going to let it happen again.
Yeah,
I was just like, I know what lessons I've been learning this week, so I don't know. He's got his own lessons.
Grant got his own.
Yeah, that's what I did say that. Yeah, but you know, I'll just, this trip is like in my deepest soul now. It's like I just won't be able to forget the hospitality your family showed us, and it was just so. I was saying to them last night because we were out swimming yesterday, and there was that little blonde kid that came swimming in.
Salem,
yeah, and I was saying to these guys last night, like, I know that saying aunt and uncle is like just a normal thing out here. You can call somebody older, but Eric introduced me to him as Uncle Daniel, and I was just like, oh my god, I was like, oh, it's so sweet, it's so nice.
Yeah, the amount of respect in the Hawaiian culture for kapuna, which is the elders, or like your people older than you, is something that really stands out to me. Is one of the most beautiful ways to live, is to just respect those that have gone before and have more wisdom.
We were always taught that, definitely, to respect the older generation.
But kids will do anything they're told, it seems like. I'm not used to that. It's like amazing, like the kids really, really like listen. If they're told to go do something, it seems like they, like anybody older can kind of tell them.
Now we're going to beat them with a pipe or something.
I didn't see any pipe beatings. And everybody's really nice, and then everybody doing anything they can for the elders too. So one of the things I've seen are like,
it's just the household, the culture, the environment they're growing up in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anywhere else in the United States. You're gonna have different households that have slightly different things.
But you got a good thing going.
Oh well, thank you.
You know,
I mean, we wanted to change some of the ways that we grew up. Yeah. We didn't like, you know, the wooden spoon. That kind of thing,
right. Well, when we first met you, we were saying last night, we had a really different impression of you as the days went on. Because now I'll remember you as like such a teddy bear of a sweet person.
That's what everybody.
Once I saw your daughter interact with you, who's like what, 20?
She's 20. Well, she's 23 now. 23? She just turned 23 last week.
Your daughter, in addition to being like just a beautiful, sweet, kind, friendly, congenial person, seeing you guys together, I was like, man, this is a good man right here. He's, you know, she high-fived her about this job she got, and I just saw your connection, and I was like, he's a really nice guy. And then as we've got to know you more, see you around more people, see you with us, like, because at first, you know, I was like, oh, he's a little gangster. You know?
Exactly.
So he's a little hard, you know, a little tough, you know.
I had to grow the beard for you.
And I was like, okay, you know. And then but you seemed just super cool, and you were really on your game. But I was, you know, as time's gone on, we saw more of how friendly, some more of your heart as time went on. And now it's just like, okay, who's a really, really sweet guy. He's got just a great, we're not going to tell anyone. You've got a great family, and the way you guys all spend time together is beautiful. So good on you, man, because you're living a really dreamy life out here.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
It wasn't always like that. We built this.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And it's just, you make that change, you make that decision, and we teach the same thing to the kids. Yeah. Simple.
Well, I'm going home with some life lessons in addition to some meat. Yeah. So thank you for this time.
Yeah.
Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.
See you guys. Aloha.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. Help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. If you still haven't seen season 1 of the WildFed TV show, you can go to myoutdoortv.com, grab yourself a free trial subscription, and then check out all 10 episodes. Season 2 of WildFed premieres on Outdoor Channel in early 2022. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out our store for WildFed hats, stickers, and more. WildFed. Food is all around you.